So the New York Knicks suffer a loss against the Cleveland Cavaliers the other night, losing 95-89, which brings us to 2 wins and 3 losses on this young NBA season. And while it may not quite be time to hit the panic button, there are some problems that we need to address. And if there's anything that I can surmise from the season thus far, is simply that this team is just not that good. And we're going to get into it, guys. The question that we're going to discuss today is what's wrong with these New York Knicks. Now, I have the solutions for what these problems are, but let's dissect through what we have to, figure out going forward on this NBA season. If there's any place that we are going to start, criticizing, being very critical, that will have to be the best players. And if I have to be honest with you guys, although Jalen Brunson, I still believe is the best player on the team, he hasn't really shown up so far in this NBA season. Not that he's been playing terrible, but I feel that his contributions, although it's been quite decent to solid, it hasn't been impactful. And if we're talking about Julius Randle, oh boy, that is something on its own that's really, really bad. I mean, the guy's been horrendous from the perimeter. Some of the worst shooting percentages probably in NBA history. We'll take a look at some statistics in a little bit. But speaking of Julius Randle, this is something that we've been dealing with for the past few seasons, right? He, comes to the Knicks a few years ago, I believe 5-6 years ago at this point, and it's been up and down for Julius Randle for the most part, right? He had the most improved player year, right, during the bubble season, and the following year, he has a horrible season, comes back this consecutive season, turns it around, and it's looking like, at least so far in these first 5 games, that he's back to that year after the most improved season that he had, which is quite alarming because, again, this is a team that is shy from, almost making the Eastern Conference Finals last season. And if we have any sort of hopes or possibilities of making it that far once again this season, then honestly, what I'm seeing so far, it's not going to cut it. But let's hear from Julius Randle and hear what he has to say on his shooting woes after the game against Cleveland the other night.
It's just a rhythm thing. We're not getting anything easy. I feel like we're just working hard for everything right now. So we're going to find a way to try to make the game a little bit easier for each other out there.
So there you have it, guys. I mean, quoting to Julius, right, verbatim, he talks about it just being a rhythm thing, right? He says, we're not getting anything easy, which I completely agree with. I'll talk about why they aren't getting anything easy. I feel like we're just working hard for everything right now. We've got to find a way to try to make the game a little easier for each other. Absolutely. But where does that start? That starts with coaching, right? Time and time again, Tom Thibodeau doesn't seem to have any creativity whatsoever on the offensive end. And as a result, we're getting the same result. Give the ball to Julius Randle at the 3. He tries to dribble his way out of a crazy situation into a double team. It's almost to the point now where every single time Julius Randle touches the ball, I'm betting that he's going to turn the ball over, whether that's fumbling the ball out of bounds, whether he gets it stolen, whether he travels, or whether he commits an offensive foul, right? We're seeing it unfold in real time. Almost every single time, guys, I kid you not, he touches the ball, I'm like panicking, like, get it out of his hand, get it out of his hands. But I don't know, guys. I was the proponent of, Julius Randle is not the solution. He's more of a means to an end, right? But let's take a look, a quick moment. Shout out to Haters Muse for the post. Julius Randle has the worst efficiency of any player, shooting 15-plus shots in a game history, right? He stinks on a level we've never seen before. And, as a Knicks fan, you always expect the worst, right? More bad things can happen, right? You should never be surprised as a Knicks fan. But this is just insane, if you ask me, right? Especially from a guy from Julius Randle who has never really been a great shooter so much, but never shooting this terribly. And he goes to mention that, it's a rhythm thing. Yeah, it's still only 5 games into the season. Some guys have it working, early on. Some guys take a little bit of time. I get all of that. But again, Julius Randle is a veteran, right? What were you doing in the offseason? What were you doing in the preseason? And apparently, evidently, it's seemingly that his poor performance in the preseason is carrying over into the regular season as well. So this is quite troubling, in all honesty. I see things going far worse than what we are right now. I mean, we're already 5 games into the NBA season. Next thing you know, we're going to be 20 games in, and if we don't find a way to turn this around, guys start shooting better, being more comfortable, as Julius Randle says, then we are going to be, fighting for a play-in, right? Not fighting for a playoff seed, fighting for a play-in. But again, I'm not going to throw all the blame on Julius Randle. I believe he holds a significant portion of the blame, but it's not all him. Again, I believe it has to do with coaching, right? Lack of creativity on the offense. Again, same isolation plays, lack of a true pick and roll. Jalen Brunson not really being impactful. But one other thing that I want to mention real quickly, something that I noticed that I didn't really realize. So I'm checking out the post-game stats, right? And, I'm looking at guys' production, which I always do, looking at the plus minus, looking at the stats, seeing field goal percentages. And speaking of field goal percentages, not just Julius, Jalen Brunson shot horribly from the field as well, right? So both of their shooting performances have been subpar to terrible, right? Specifically Julius Randle. But one thing, if you look at the bench, right? Let's take a look at the bench for a moment. You may notice there is a significant amount of shooting guards. And this is another problem that I think is something that needs to be addressed in terms of what's wrong with this team. They have too many guards, right? We gave away our only other power forward outside of Julius Randle, that being Obi Toppin, for another shooting guard. I mean, you look at this lineup, right? Look at all these shooting guards you have. You added DiVincenzo, who has, I was a little hard on him to start the NBA season so far, but he's seeming to turn it around a little bit. His shooting's starting to become more consistent, and he's playing a little bit of defense out there, so I ain't mad at him at the moment. But he hasn't been great, right? And when you're going up against teams that have size, they face the Milwaukee Bucks in their next game. What are you going to do against all of these guys with all this size, right? All of these, stretch wings. When you got guys out there that are significantly shorter, that are not necessarily defensively sound, you got all of these shooting guards. You need to offload a lot of these guards, consolidate the roster, and bring in some more size, some more backup, knowing that Mitch is probably going to get injured at some point in the season, knowing that Isaiah Hartenstein, while I love Hartenstein, he can't carry the team defensively with Mitchell Robinson being out. You need some size out there, and currently we just don't have the the infantry, the support to go up against some of these bigger teams. So I'm looking at this roster, even the starters to the bench. I don't see anything exciting, right? It worked last year, but we know very well how sports work. Even if you had a successful season prior, right, you still have to do a lot to improve the team. You can't just roll out the same team and even though you have positive results, expect to have the same results in the following year. So I think we really need to be exploring. We didn't make any moves during the trade deadline last season. I think we need to be really aggressive. I think we need to be monitoring the Joel Embiid situation. I believe that the Philadelphia 76ers have unofficially hit the restart button, right? Making that Harden trade, bringing in role players and essentially a bunch of draft picks. So I would be mindful of trying to, get Embiid out of Philly. Give whatever you can to get Embiid, because what I'm seeing so far, I don't like it one bit. And I don't really see this changing. I mean, yeah, sure, guys are going to get into better rhythm eventually once the season gets fully underway, but they don't look impressive. They don't have an identity. They're not as defensively sound as they were last season. Guys are shooting horribly. It's not just Brunson and Julius. Guys across the board. And this is one of the other problems that I wanted to address that I feel like hasn't really been talked about in a lot of corners of the league and what you have. But this is the whole situation with Quentin Grimes. Now, I've always been a fan of Quentin Grimes, right, since he's been on the team. I tried to defend him, especially last season. But if I'm to be honest with you guys, right, and if we are to be honest with ourselves, be honest with each other, does Quentin Grimes deserve to be in the starting lineup? Shout out to Alex B. Can someone please tell me why the Knicks continue to start Quentin Grimes? Facts, right? Like, what is the reason? What is the reason why Quentin Grimes cannot be pulled out of the starting lineup, right? Hell, you have even seen guys like RJ get the nod as almost as if he can have his minutes decrease going back last season, right, from some of his poor performances. But somehow, Quentin Grimes remains safe. And you got this guy in IQ who is a veteran at this point. This is his 4th year in the league, I believe. 5th year, I'm not too sure. I believe it's 4th year. Who's playing phenomenally so far. He's on a contract year, as you will. Lights out. Who is, for those who want to make the argument that Quentin Grimes should be in the starting lineup because of his defense, his IQ, right? He's a very smart player. I get all of that. He's a good defender. Decent to mediocre three-point shooter. He was advertised before as being this spot-up three-point shooter, but he's been very inconsistent from three. It's hard to trust him. I've seen him miss so many open shots. Guys are trying to set him up, and more so lately, I've seen guys look away from him because he can't be trusted to make shots. And again, you have Emmanuel Quickley, who's a lightning rod off the bench, but who's also has the highest defensive rating on the NBA, on the whole team. So it's like, if you're keeping Grimes in for defense, you got your best defender in IQ sitting on the bench. Now, okay, the other argument is that, okay, well, IQ, he's the focal point of the offense coming off the bench. So if we bring him into the starting lineup, we're going to lose the firepower from the second unit, right? But still, one of the Knicks' problems that they've had for years is that they have a habit of getting down early. They make the comeback somewhere in the third quarter, fourth quarter. They take a little bit of a lead and they blow it, right? Because they're gassed from making the comeback. Why not start the game with a significant advantage, right? Why don't you upload all of your firepower? That way the team that you're facing is having to counter what you're doing as opposed to us countering what they're doing. And that's what happens. We go down early. We don't really do a good job of, establishing ourselves on the offensive end. And as Julius Randle mentioned, every bucket is coming very difficult for this team. And one way to make that easier is to throw in arguably your best three-point shooter, definitely your best defender. And the other thing about IQ being in the starting lineup is RJ. We have seen it for the past few years. Whenever IQ and RJ are on the floor together, good things happen. This floor opens up. If you got a guy in Quentin Grimes who, while he's okay defensively, if he's not making his shots, that's going to make things a lot harder for guys like RJ and Julius who need space to operate. You need to draw defenders out to the perimeter to give them easy opportunities to score in the paint. And Quentin Grimes hasn't been doing that. Now, if you have Quickley in that lineup, I guarantee you things look a lot easier for RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. But only time will tell, guys. Again, it's too early to hit the panic button. I believe the things that are alarming so far is something that we really need to pay attention to. They can become some serious problems later on in the season. But yeah, it is early. So, I would give guys a little bit of a chance to find themselves. But if I'm to be honest with you guys, I'm a bit concerned. I'm really concerned because we've seen enough evidence for Julius Randle to know that he is this kind of player, right? Has good games, has a lot of bad games, can score in a myriad of ways, can lose a game for you in a ton of ways, right? The only bright spot that I would say so far in this NBA season, and it sucks because this guy just got injured, is RJ Barrett. Now, one of my streams recently, I mentioned that, I believe the FIBA games really helped RJ get into real condition and to be absolutely ready to start the season. And so far, we're seeing that he is ready. I believe he has been the best player on this Knicks team out of these 5 games to start the season, right? So I'm very impressed with what I've seen from RJ. It's unfortunate that he has this knee injury. Hopefully is not anything significant because that would be a complete bummer if he has to miss significant time. But outside of RJ, again, something seems a little odd with Brunson. Julius is shooting terribly. Grimes hasn't given me a reason to validate himself being a starter. Where do we go from here, right? Now, you know how this season goes, guys. Things can turn around lightning fast. But again, I'm worried. But that's going to be all for the video, guys. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, please hit the like button, subscribe, share, comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Catch you guys on the rebound.